482. Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch. Michael Barr there first. 323 to 580. Adam Young, 1955. Okay. 331 10th and Grambling for a total.
Welcome to the Reclaim Project podcast. In this episode, we're joined by Adam Meyers, a police captain with the Hartford Police Department in Wisconsin. Adam candidly shares the mental health challenges he faced after a critical incident in the line of duty sent his life on a downward spiral. After a lengthy recovery, Adam established Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma to promote mental health awareness and inspire those on the front line to speak out about their mental health. Adam, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to share my experience. So thank you very much.
Let's just jump straight into it. So you're a police captain in Wisconsin. Was that always on the radar for you growing up as a kid? You've always wanted to be in the police?
I did. I always wanted to be a police officer as far back as I can remember. When I was a little boy, I lived in the city of Racine, which is in Wisconsin. And our house was on Highway 20, which was also called Washington Avenue. And my parents said, and I remember every time I heard a police car drive by the house really fast with lights and sirens, I'd run to the window, I'd look out and I would say an car, because of the siren, and it just always excited me. I mean, I thought fire engines were cool. I thought ambulances were cool, but I wanted to see that cop car. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And my parents tell me the first time I saw a police officer get out of a police car, I looked at them and I said, an car man. I want to be an car man. So all my life, I did what I thought was necessary to grow up and be an car man, a police officer. You know, I graduated from high school. I graduated from college. I joined the Army for 5 years where I was an active duty military policeman. And then when I got out of the Army, I was able to go back home to Racine and get hired by the Racine Police Department, where it all started, where that dream job all started. And I remember driving in a police car, driving by the county building where the jail is and all the county offices are. And they had these very large mirrored windows. And I remember looking at myself, seeing myself driving a squad car. And I'm like, I'm an car man. I did it. This is awesome. Something I always wanted to do, and I actually did it, and it's great.
So that was in the early 2000s that you joined?
Yeah, I started my law enforcement career in March of 2001.
Yep. Wow. And always in Wisconsin?
Always in Wisconsin, yep.
Right. So let's skip ahead. You're a police officer for some 15 years. So in 2016, something happens that changes things around dramatically for you. So walk us through that.
I was on patrol. It was Friday, April 8th, 2016, about 5:15 p.m. And I was in the police department working on a retail theft report when I was dispatched to our Walmart store. And Walmart is a retail store in Wisconsin. And initially the call came out as non-emergent. Dispatch contacted me and basically said, please respond to Walmart. There's somebody there refusing to leave. She's with a couple chaperones and they need your help with removing her from the store. And like I said, it wasn't emergent. It wasn't that big of a deal. We do that all the time. We go to restaurants, we go to stores, we go to people's houses, basically show up and let them know that, hey, you can't be here, you have to leave, or assist somebody with removing them from wherever we're responding. So I grabbed my laptop, I walked out the back of the police department, jumped in my squad car and just started driving to Walmart. It wasn't that emergent. And initially the complaint came in as a 911 hang-up call. So our dispatch center called the chaperone back and was able to speak with them. And they said, her name was Melissa. They said, Melissa's refusing to leave the store. Now she's walking towards the sporting goods department Now she's removing a knife from the package. It ended up being a hatchet, not a knife. And now she's being threatening to customers and damaging merchandise. So they advised me of this, and the second they told that to me, I turned on my lights and sirens and I started stepping it up. I'd traveling to Walmart at a higher rate of speed, and I remember pulling into the parking lot, and it was a Friday, 5:15 p.m. It was busy. There were hundreds of people in the store, a lot of people in the parking lot, but nobody would get out of the way. I remember here's this police car, lights and sirens, pulling the parking lot, and everybody just kind of looked at it like, hey, look at there's a cop car, and I'm thinking, will you please move? There's really an emergency inside the store. And so initially what I was going to do is Walmart is pretty much set up the same at every store. There's an auto center in the back of the store, and then next to it is sporting goods. So what I was going to do is I was going to enter through the auto center. But while I was responding, dispatch said that she's walking towards the front of the store. So I couldn't respond that way anymore. I wanted to do that and isolate her back there to keep everybody else safe. But she started moving towards the front of the store. So what I did was I pulled up my squad car next to one of the general merchandise entrances, and I turned my sirens off, but I left my lights on because I was hoping if anybody saw what was going on or anybody wanted to go into Walmart, they would see this police car there with the lights on and think twice about going through that door. So I did that to kind of keep everybody safe. I exited my squad car. I removed my duty weapon because I had no idea where she was. She could have been right there, right inside the door. And I made contact with a man and a woman, and I asked them, where is she? And they kind of pointed down towards the health and beauty aisle or towards the lawn and garden aisle. And that's another main aisle. And I just ran right down there. And when I ran down there, her back was facing me. I identified her as being the person. Her back was facing me, so I started giving her some verbal commands. And when she turned and faced me, I saw the hatchet in the hand. And I'm thinking, that's not a knife, that's a hatchet. And, not that a knife would have been any less threatening, but I was thinking like a pocket knife. Okay, she has a pocket knife. But when I got there, she turned and faced me, she had a hatchet. I gave her multiple verbal commands to stop, to drop the hatchet. She kept advancing towards me, and then I ended up shooting her twice. I shot her once in the leg, and then once kind of in the sternum right here, and she fell to the ground. Now, she did end up dying several hours later. She went into surgery. They tried stopping the internal bleeding, and unfortunately, they weren't able to do that, and she did die. I remember my gunshots being so loud, it sounded like a broken speaker. And I remember when all the clarity came back to me, the only way that I can explain it was it kind of sounded like this, and then everything was clear. And then I was hearing things and sensing things that I think I was just really tuned up and really tuned into everything. I know when I pulled the trigger that I changed people's lives. I know I took Melissa's life. I know that I changed my life. I changed the lives of the people who witnessed the shooting, even people in clear across the store who heard the gunshots. Now they all have a story to tell that, hey, I was at the store and the police shot somebody. And I don't take that lightly because I think about that every single day. One way or another, I think about shooting and killing her. And it was sad. I found out that she had a 6-year-old daughter at the time. And at the time, I have 2 daughters. And at the time, my daughters were young. So I get it.
Yeah.
Her daughter will never be able to see her mom anymore. Her mom and dad will never be able to see their daughter anymore. So I didn't wake up hoping that I would shoot somebody. I didn't
Of
want to
course.
go to work and do that, but it was necessary. And I know I did the right thing, but it still doesn't make it easy.
Oh, let's just unpack that incident. So you say when you arrived there, you went down the aisle and she had her back to you. What was her demeanor?
I could tell that she was hacking or chopping at bags of wheat and feed that were on a display pallet. And when I made verbal commands and identified myself, when she turned and faced me, I just saw that hatchet and I was like, oh my gosh. And my weapon was already out. It was in the ready position. And I was giving her multiple verbal commands to stop, to drop the hatchet. And she just kept walking towards me. She wouldn't listen to me. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was probably thinking a million things in my head, but I was thinking, why isn't she listening? Why isn't she stopping? I'm a fully uniformed police officer in a and with a gun right here, and she's not listening. And then there just came a time where I knew I had to
Yeah.
shoot. I had to. And
Yeah.
there were so many people around me, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I have no other choice. I have no
Yeah.
other choice. If I did, I would have used my pepper
Yeah.
spray. I would have used my taser or a baton, and I had no other choice. She was coming
Yeah.
after me with a hatchet, and it just
How how far away was she?
she was about 11 feet.
So, just for the police, for the non-police listeners and viewers, so there's a use of force, I guess, hierarchy, or that that's open to police.
The force option continuum.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you take into account having to assess the situation and then compute what's the appropriate force option, that coupled with the duress of the situation, the intensity, and you said you were so tuned into what was in front of you, and I can relate to that. I mean, I've never shot anyone, but I've had my firearm drawn, and that in itself, just having your firearm at the ready, that in itself is quite stressful because you know this is the right option to use, but you don't want to use it. You don't want to discharge that firearm. So I can understand when you say that after the shots were fired, you came back into yourself basically, because it is, when you're so consumed by this situation, it is kind of out of body, isn't it? Like
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I really felt like everything seemed surreal. I mean, I
Yeah.
knew where I was. I knew what was going on. I knew what I did, but not only looking at her, you have other customers all around too. So you got to be aware, if I shoot, will my bullets accidentally hit somebody else? I mean,
Yeah.
you have to make sure you know what the area behind her is too, because for example, the bullet that went in and out of one of her legs continued to go down that aisle and lodged itself in an aluminum door. So if there would have been customers behind her, that bullet very well could have hit, injured, or killed somebody else too. So it's not a easy decision. Everything has to be almost perfectly lined up and set. I mean, you have so many other people. You got to make sure everything is kind of timed perfectly, and then make the decision: am I going to do it or am I not? I mean, it's not an easy decision.
It's not.
It's not.
When did you find out? Did you go to the hospital, or when did you find out that she had unfortunately passed on?
I found out the following day. I went home that night once I was cleared to go home. And I remember walking in the front door of my house, and I went home alone. My two daughters were with my ex-wife, and I walked in the front of my house and I knelt down next to my love seat, and I prayed to God that Melissa wouldn't die. I didn't want her to die. That was the last thing. All I was trying to do was stop the threat. I didn't want to kill somebody, and I really didn't think she was going to die. The next morning, I woke up, it was a Saturday, and I wanted to have some kind of normalcy. Like, what would I do on a day off? And I decided I'm going to go get my hair cut, then I'm going to go pick up my daughters. And while I was walking out to my car, my chief called me on the phone, and it was just kind of the basic conversation. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing good. And he asked, when can you come in and see me? And I said, well, I'm going to go get my hair cut, and then I'm going to grab my daughters, and then I can come see you. And he told me, he said, Adam, I didn't want to tell you this over the phone, but she died. And the reason why he told me over the phone, and we talked about this later, is because he didn't want me to find out through social media or the news. He wanted to be the person to make sure that I knew right away. And I appreciate that. I respect him for that. But I remember getting off the phone and just sitting there in my car thinking, this changes everything. I killed somebody. It's I don't know. I felt it was different that, okay, I shot somebody, but now I killed somebody. Now what's going to happen? So that weekend was kind of a blur. I don't really remember much about that weekend. And I do remember going in and talking to my chief later on that day. And there's probably a million things I was thinking about, but he told me that he was going to release my police department photograph to the media. So they had a photograph of me, and so I found out, the next day on the phone, my chief called me and told me she had died, and right then I was like, what's going to happen next? Because this changes everything.
Did you go into work on the Monday? Or did you take time off?
Yeah, I had the weekend off, and then on Monday I had to go to the sheriff's office because some of the investigators started the investigation into my shooting. And I remember when I was driving there, I was really nervous because for some reason I thought there wasn't any video of my shooting, and that didn't make much sense because Walmart has cameras everywhere,
Yeah.
and I don't know why I thought that, but that's what I thought. And when I went into the sheriff's office and I was waiting for an investigator to come see me, one finally came and saw me, and he said something like, "Oh, there's video," and I saw that as a negative, kind of like a sarcastic the way he
Right.
said it, and he didn't mean anything by it. But when he said, "Oh, there's video," I was thinking, "What does
Right.
that mean?" And I got really worried. I, I was worried because I was thinking, what if the video shows something that I don't remember? What if it's completely different than what I remember? And when we went up and watched the different videos and listened to the 911 call, it was exactly how I remembered it. I mean, there were a lot of things that I don't remember, but I
Of
could look
course.
at myself and say, that's me doing what I was trained to do. I don't remember that, but that's me. But everything that I did remember was exactly what was portrayed on the video.
Did you settle into the mindset of, okay, did I use the right option? Did you ask yourself a lot of what ifs?
I didn't.
Like,
Believe it or I never second guessed myself. I knew I
yeah,
did the right thing. I knew I
yeah,
did the right thing. I think I had been a police officer for 14 years by the
yeah,
time of my shooting. And I still remember that night of the shooting. I wanted to tell everybody what I did. And
yeah.
everybody's like, no, you're not talking. We'll just wait. And I was like, I wanted to tell. I wanted to say I did this and this is where it happened. But I never doubted myself. I never second guessed. I never thought I should have done that. Never. And to this day, I've never second guessed myself.
So tell us about the weeks after that.
Well, I was off for about 30 days for about a month.
Right, right,
That's standard protocol. And I was investigated. And believe it or not, at least in the United States, when you're a police officer involved in a shooting, at least in Wisconsin, you're labeled as a suspect until you're clear.
right,
So, and I was told that because, until it's a justifiable homicide, you're a suspect. And I remember reading my name, suspect Adam Meyers, and I had been told that that's going to happen. So they were like, don't be alarmed when you see that. That's normal protocol. That's so for 30 days I was off and I was ready to go back to work. I had no doubt in my mind I was going to go back to work. I wasn't worried at all. And I was cleared and I went back to work. I look back now and think I went back too early, but I went back to work and I was glad to be there and I just wanted to keep going.
So when you did keep going, when you did go back to work and you kept going, like you say, at which point, if you can remember, did you start seeing the signs that, okay, I'm not okay?
Yeah, almost immediately. And the reason why I knew that is because before my shooting, I collected wine and I went through the wine bottles I had at home like that. And then I started drinking liquor and I really wasn't a big liquor guy before. I started drinking whiskey and vodka and a lot of it. And it pretty much consumed me on my days off. That's what I looked forward to it. I looked forward to coping like that. And almost immediately I started realizing what was going on, but I rationalized it as something I did on my day off. I wasn't doing it during my work week. Everything's fine. And then, but it got worse and worse and worse, and it just took over. It was kind of a routine that, on my Friday, I would go home and I would start drinking. And then we usually had 3 days off in a row. So the first 2 days, including that Friday night, I would be drinking. And then that third day was a recovery day before I went back to work. I did that for years. Yeah.
For years?
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
I have a tactical vest right here that a lot of police officers wear. And these are some of my poor coping strategies. right here, it was, alcohol, casual sex, and drugs. And when I just talked about alcohol, I abused alcohol. There's a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka. I would drink this in 30 minutes or less. I would also make my own cocktail with a wine glass. I would put like NyQuil or sleeping medicine in the wine glass and just make my own cocktail. And there was one time I reached into the medicine cabinet and took my daughter's prescription cough medicine because it had codeine in it, and that makes you all warm and fuzzy and comfortable, and I could just
Yeah.
lay on the couch and pretty much be a drunk and a bum. And that's what I would do with alcohol. And another way that I coped poorly was casual sex. I mean,
Yep.
for me, sex is fun. It feels good. It's exciting. But what I would do is I would meet women online, and sometimes within 30 minutes of meeting, we'd have sex. And I remember laying in bed with a woman and thinking, after we just finished having sex, and I'm thinking, you got to stop, Adam. This isn't working for you. This isn't healthy. I started not liking myself, but it
Yeah.
still wasn't enough for me to stop. I would worry that what if I get her pregnant? What if I caught an STD? But
Right.
even that didn't help me or slow that down. It was just, it made me feel good. It numbed the pain. It helped me escape. It caused me nothing. It just caused me more stress, depression, anxiety. It was poor coping and self-destructive behavior.
So you were aware those symptoms were there, the stress and the depression and the pain. So this was all of those behaviours that you just outlined. That was purely just to mask or to cover up what you were dealing with inside.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, there was one time, I talk about self-harm. There was one time it was during the 4th of July weekend, and I didn't want to work. So what I did was I have a 12-inch crescent wrench right here. I hit my knee several times, enough to cause redness, abrasion, bruising. If somebody would look at it, they would definitely see some kind of injury. And then what I would do is I went to the emergency room and I lied to them and I said I tripped down the stairs out my back door and hit my knee on a manhole cover that was covering the septic tank. And they gave me x-rays, they gave me pain meds, they gave me crutches and a doctor's excuse. And then I went into the police department, gave it to my chief, and I got out of work. And that's something, why? Because I lied. I should have just gone in and said, Chief, I just can't work this week. I'm sorry, I can't work. And it would have been okay because he did support me. But I still feel embarrassed and shamed about that because I lied to my chief, the man that really supported me. I don't know why I did that.
Yeah. Were there any, let's say, colleagues or anyone close to you, loved ones or anything like that, that approached you about it? So look, we've noticed these behavioural patterns. What's going on with you?
Yeah, nobody did. My family lived 3.5, 4 hours away from where I was a police officer, so it was really easy to hide it from them. I mean, they could feel that something was wrong, but they couldn't prove it. So it's really easy to hide it from anyone if they're 3.5, 4 hours away from you. And people at work, they knew I struggled. I find it hard to believe that they didn't know. I think they did, and the reason why they didn't reach out is because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to say, so they just chose not to do anything. Yeah, I mean, there were times that I would drunk text my mom and dad. There was one time that I drunk text my mom and dad saying, I need $50. Please put it in my bank account. I can't tell you why. And I don't even remember doing that. I just read the text message the next day and I'm like, oh my gosh, I texted my parents this. And I remember calling them and saying, I don't need any money. Don't do that. And my mom would say, oh, your dad already put the money in your account. And it was really poor coping, self-destructive.
And was there a pivotal point or an event or something that made you sit down and talk to yourself? As in, okay, this needs to stop. Yeah,
there was one time in 2019 that at 9:58 in the morning, and I don't remember doing this, so I must have still been intoxicated, but I wrote a contract to myself and told myself something similar to no way, shape, or form am I going to consume, drink, touch alcohol, or anything like that. So internally, there must have been something that said, "Hey, Adam, you got to knock this off because this ain't working for you." Um, but even that didn't help because I continued to abuse alcohol for years after that. But I think the one moment that really woke me up was in December of 2021, December 28th, 2021, I was at an active shooter training at an elementary school. And I was seated comfortably just like I am now, and we were watching a PowerPoint about different active shooters that happened in the United States and across the world. And I started getting really hot, uncomfortable, and not in my stomach. And about a minute later, I reached up to my forehead like this, and it was drenched in water. I was having a panic attack.
Wow.
And there were about 20 or 30 other police officers there, and they all knew me. But my first reaction was I need to fight through this and I need to hide it. I can't let anybody know what's going on with me right now. But if I would have just said, I can't do this training, I need to leave, I'm pretty sure it would have been okay because they all knew me. They all knew that I shot and killed somebody in the line of duty. But I truly believe because of that stigma, that's why I thought, hey, I got to fight it and I got to hide it. And I think I was able to do it because nobody brought it up to me during the training. But I completed the training. I went on a couple days off, and then I went and worked New Year's Eve for somebody. I was a detective at the time, but I was working uniform patrol. And I remember getting in my squad car, setting up my laptop, and I said, you know what? I'm done. Forget this. I quit. I ain't doing this no more. And I reached out to one of my sergeants, and I said, I need you to come meet with me. I'm going to the chief. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to quit. I need you to be there, with me when I do that. So he met with me and he said, you're not going to quit, but I'll come with you to the chief. We went in there and we talked to the chief, and I told him, I'm done. I'm quitting. I ain't doing this no more. And looking back, I don't think I wanted to quit being a cop. I truly believe that I wanted to quit coping the way I was for years. It wasn't working for me anymore. And I knew, hey, I'm done. I need some real help. So the chief just sent me home. He says, go home, take some time. Let me know when you're ready to come back. And I want to say about 2 weeks had passed, and I reached out to him and I said, I'm ready to come back to work. So this would be in January of 2022. And he said, well, the only way you can come back to work is you have to have a fitness for duty evaluation, a psychological evaluation. And I was like, all right, let's go. I've been speaking about my mental health for years. I'm a strong mental health advocate. I can do this. I'm fine. I can come back to work. So I scheduled the appointment. And when I'm driving to the appointment, this appointment was 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So it was a day-long, appointment. And I'm driving there, and I thought to myself, I'm going to lie. I'm going to lie, and I'm going to try to beat this test. I'm fine. I don't need to take this, so I'm going to lie. And once I got there and I'm sitting in the waiting room, I thought again, and it's like, I have to be honest. That's the only way that I'm going to get the right kind of help, is that I need to be honest. So I chose to be honest. And I got the results, and I have the results right here in front of me. And when I got this, I was, unfit for duty. I have another patch here. I was unfit for duty.
Wow.
And I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, PTSD, acute stress with dissociative features. And I remember opening this up, and I remember reading it, and I started crying because this explained me. This was all about me and full of answers to all the crap I had gone through over the years. So I'm like, it talks about difficulty having relationships, isolates itself, short-tempered, just all kinds of stuff. So I saw this as a new beginning. So let's go. What do I got to do to get better?
And what was the next step after that? Well, what did that recovery process look like for you?
So what happened is once I got this, I was unfit for duty. I wasn't able to go back to work. I requested a 90-day leave of absence with my police chief, with my police department, and it was approved. And the police department psychologist said he recommended 6 months of short-term disability. He said, go to these different therapies, and possibly in August you could go back to work, just depending on how you're doing. And so I would go to therapy for 2, 3 times a week. I never missed an appointment. I was doing psychotherapy, which is talk therapy, DBT, biofeedback, EMDR. I was getting better. I was feeling great. And even I was hopeful and confident that I was going to go back to work. So unfortunately, a couple months later, I was put on a safety plan because during that psychological evaluation, there was some suicidal ideations,
Right.
which I understand, but it's different when it's different when it's you. It's
Absolutely.
completely different when it's you. I mean,
Correct.
for years I had always been there for other people who were struggling and needed that support. Now it was me. So it's different when you're going through it. And one of that suicidal ideations was I put my gun to my head at least a dozen times. And now I have a plastic replica of my duty weapon. And what I would do when I was intoxicated is I would remove the magazine, I would clear the chamber, take the bullet out, and then I would put my gun to my temple and I would pull the trigger because I wanted to hear that metallic click. I never thought that I wanted to kill myself, but I still have no idea why I did it. Some people said maybe you were planning to do it and that was kind of preparation, but I
Possibly.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was put
What-
on a safety plan, which is fine. I don't have any problem with that because it was helpful and I needed to do that.
Yeah. So just for those that haven't been through it, or those that don't know what it is, methods like or techniques like EMDR they're quite confronting. They're quite brutal. Yeah. So things do get worse before they get better. So is that really when the ideation started, because you were uncovering or you were diving into deep wounds?
Quite possibly, yeah, because EMDR was a game changer for me though, because
Yeah,
Same for me.
I didn't know I was doing this, but after my shooting, I kept thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough because I actually shot and killed somebody. But I was good enough because I was able to do the job that I was trained to do. But I think what I struggled with is before my shooting, I prided myself with being able to not use force, to talk people down. I've never pepper sprayed anybody. I've never used my baton on anybody. I've tased, people a few times. But then you have this critical incident where I shoot and kill somebody. So I'm thinking, well, I'm not good enough because if I was, I could have talked her down. Well, this was a completely different incident.
Yes.
But up until EMDR opened that up, and I'm like, wow, that's what I was thinking for years. I had no idea. So that was a game changer. I mean, if you don't know about EMDR and give it a shot, because it really helped me.
Yeah, absolutely, and it did for me too. It's very powerful. It's confronting, but it's a very powerful tool. Part of your recovery, or even prior to your recovery, was there any communication or any thoughts of reaching out to the victim's family?
I've been thinking about that. It's something that I would really like to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if they would want to speak with me. I think it would help in the healing process, not only for them, but for me. I am religious. I'm Lutheran, and I truly believe that when I die, I'm going to go to heaven. And when I go to heaven, I'll see Melissa, and she won't be struggling with mental health. And I hope she welcomes me with open arms and tells me everything's okay. And because it is something that I struggle with. And
Of course it
is. Yeah.
there's a part of me that wants her family to know that I'm not a monster. I didn't go to work. I didn't want to kill her. I was hoping just to stop the threat.
And that's what we're trained to do. That's what we're trained to do, isn't it? We're trained to stop the threat. So when you discharge a firearm, we're trained to shoot at the center of mass, which you did. You don't shoot with the intention to kill.
Right.
Yeah.
And even even after I shot Melissa and she fell to the ground, the ambulance showed up and they were talking with her. I was looking and I could see her having a conversation with the paramedics. So I never thought that she was going to die. And then the next day when the chief told me she died, I was just
shocked.
I didn't know what to. I just knew it changed everything. I wasn't expecting that.
You went a number of years of putting on a mask, carrying on with your duties, and until things cracked. Then you started your recovery. At that point, did you leave that department, or were you always going to go back to that particular department, or did you move somewhere else?
I was terminated from that police department. What had happened is when my 90-day leave of absence expired, my chief reached out to me and said he wanted to have a meeting. So I had a meeting, and he said, you can either resign or you're going to be terminated. We're not extending your leave of absence. And I thought it over, and I chose not to resign. I didn't do anything wrong. I was struggling with mental health. I had been at that police department for 14 years. I had never been disciplined. I had never been suspended. I received medals. I received awards. And now all of a sudden it's like, we're not extending your leave of absence. You can resign or we're terminating you. You got to be kidding me. So I was walked out of the police department and I hopped in my Jeep. And I remember pulling out of the parking lot and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What now? I didn't know what to think or what to do. And, what if I would have went home and killed myself? Because everybody knew I loved being a cop. I wanted to be an ERCAR man. I worked there for 14 years. I was just terminated. What if I would have went home and killed myself? There was no follow-up. So I was in shock. I just couldn't believe it.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's what stops a lot of officers from stepping forward, like with their struggles? That fear of being chastised and terminated and being labelled as damaged goods, so we can't use you anymore.
Absolutely, 100%, no doubt in my mind, because I speak with first responders about different things involving mental health, and if they're going to reach out, if they're struggling with mental health and they want to reach out for help, but they think that they're going to be chastised, or lose their livelihood, lose their job, suspended, disciplined, how are they going to support their family? How are they going to pay their rent or their house payment or their boat payment or support how are they going to do that? So they choose not to. That's what I did for years, because I'm thinking, what if I lose it all? What am I going to do? And that should not be in your thought process. If you're struggling with mental health, you should be able to immediately reach out and say, hey, chief, hey, sergeant, whomever, I'm struggling. I need help. And it should be okay, because it's okay to talk about your mental health. You're not alone. You shouldn't have to suffer in silence. But so many first responders do. And so many first responders die by suicide because they can't take care of it themselves. Absolutely. I thought I could for years. I couldn't. And until I finally put myself first, I was suffering. And, when I first became a police officer in 2001, several years later, there was a critical incident where 3 people died, 7 people were shot. And I was an evidence technician at that crime scene. And I was still a young, new officer. And I remember a police officer was going around after the incident asking everybody if they were okay. And I was okay. I wasn't poorly coping. I wasn't having bad dreams or anything like that. But after I've gone through what I've gone through now, I look back at that. There's no way I would have told him I was struggling. I finally got hired, my dream job in my hometown. There's no way I would have said, yeah, I'm having nightmares. No, because I would have lost it all. At least that's what I would have thought. And that can't be in your thought process, because that gets in the way of getting the right kind of help and healing.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's not only that stigma within the institution, within the departments, within the organisation, the agencies, various agencies. It's also externally that people expect us to be these superheroes, and a few years ago, this is after I left the feds. I was at a dinner. I wouldn't say a party, but we're at a restaurant with a group of us. And somebody within the group, I talked about what I'm doing now, with all the public speaking around mental health, especially first responders, much like you're doing. And one guy made the comment that, okay, well, is that necessary? Because you guys know what you signed up for. And I actually didn't know what to do with that comment. I couldn't be upset with him because to a degree, he's right. Like, yeah, we do accept that we're going to be exposed to the dark part of society, and we're going to deal with a lot of things that ordinary people don't deal with. But we sign up for that. What we don't sign up for is not being able to talk about our struggles when we are struggling. Having to hide or mask our pain. That's what we don't sign up for. That we don't sign up for the lack of support.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, I get that. A lot of people say, oh, that's what you signed up for. What do you expect? Okay, I understand what they mean. But then if I sign up for that, then there should be resources available for me if I need help. It should be okay for me to reach out and ask for help because it's part of what I signed up for.
Exactly.
But it's not. There's still that stigma. I think it's always going to be there. It's getting better because of what you and I are doing. We're talking about it. More people are talking about it. But the stigma is still there. It
is. And like you said, these things are in place. There are support services in place, but you almost feel a sense of shame or guilt when you reach out to it, because, like, okay, I'm supposed to be this tough law enforcement officer, so yeah, what's everyone else going to think if I actually reach out to a service that's designed to be there?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because at that police department that I used to work for, we had a computer system, and on every computer system, there were certain icons that were shared across the whole system. And I remember an officer came to me and said, hey, Adam, I just want to let you know that there's some mental health resources on the desktop. We didn't know what to label it, so we just labeled it miscellaneous. So if you're looking for it, that's where it all is. I'm like, why would you label it miscellaneous? Why wouldn't you label it mental health?
Yeah.
Because what if you get a guy or a gal that is struggling, but they don't want to reach out, but all they have to do is click on a computer and all the resources are there? They're not going to know where to look. If it's labeled miscellaneous,
yeah, exactly.
Label it mental health, and then let everybody know this is here. Feel free to use it. It's discreet. You can do it in the privacy of your desk or this office. But it was almost kind of like, hush hush. Here it is if you need it. We're not even going to label it mental health. We're going to label it miscellaneous.
Isn't that ridiculous?
It doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't make sense. And what you're wearing there, I see a therapist. That really should be a badge of honor, like you're wearing it now. Like, it's not a statement to say that, oh, look, I'm really weak, I'm not coping. It's quite the opposite. It's a statement that says, okay, I'm showing some strength, I'm showing some courage, that I am. It doesn't mean I'm a weak officer. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite.
Right. And I still see a therapist every Monday at 5 p.m. I'm sitting on the couch talking to my therapist, and I absolutely love her. And here's another one I got. This one says, I take medication. And I do. Here it is. Lexapro 20 milligrams. I wake up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, I pop one of these pills, and I keep going. And it's okay. It helps me. So I'm going to keep doing that. And believe it or not, there's so many people that do. You don't have to tell people your business. You don't have to tell people, hey, I take this, or I see it. But if it works for you, if it's helpful, so what? Do those things. It's okay. It makes you a better person. It makes you stronger.
That's what I mean. That's my point. So where are you at now? You've been promoted to captain. You're at another police department, but also still in Wisconsin.
I am. So after I was terminated, I didn't know what to do. I went home and I was chatting with my sister Amy, and she goes, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." And she goes, "Why don't you move down here by us," which was 3.5, 4 hours away. And I told her, "I don't have much money." And, she said, "All you have to do is get down here and we'll take care of the rest." So I did. I packed up my stuff and I moved in with her. And at the time, I wasn't seeing a therapist. At the time, I wasn't taking medication. But secretively, behind my back, which I'm blessed, she was looking for a therapist for me. Because she was on the outside looking in. She knew I was struggling. She could tell I was struggling, and she found a therapist, and that's who I see now. And I started getting healthier and getting better. And initially, Sean, I didn't know if I wanted to be a cop anymore, especially because of all the crap I went through.
Yeah.
Number one, I don't even know if I want to be a cop anymore. Number two, nobody's going to hire me because if I interview anywhere, they're going to say, "Yeah, this guy's a nut job. We're not going to hire him." But after I got healthier, I started thinking, I want to be a cop. I love being a cop. That's who I am. It's what I do. I enjoy it. So I started applying at police departments. I sent out 50 state applications, cover letters, and resumes to 50 police departments in a 30-minute drive of where I was living. And the next day, police departments started calling me and emailing me and wanting me to interview with them. And I'm like, wow, they want me. So I
Wow.
started interviewing. And there was a time in a 2-week period that 3 police departments in 3 separate counties offered me jobs. And I got to pick one. And that's where I work now. And my chief now, Sean McGee, he's great. We have a boat patrol. We have a therapy dog at the police department. When I first got hired, the chief and I were on the lake, and he said, Adam, I know you speak about your mental health. I support you. If you want to keep doing that, I support you, and you can even wear your police uniform if you want to do that." So
Wow.
it's great. I mean, and he doesn't just say he supports. He
Yeah.
really does. And shortly after I got hired, I was promoted to captain. So it's good. And the only reason why I am where I am now is because I put myself first. That's the only reason. And with first responders, we're always putting everybody else first. We're helping everybody else. We're last. But I had to say enough's enough. I had to start taking care of myself. And because I did that, I got healthier, and then I got back to being a police officer again. So
Yeah.
it wasn't an easy road, but I look back at it and it's so worth it.
And that's the key, putting yourself first. When you talked earlier about suicide ideation, isn't it funny that when we come across people in the job that, that we need to talk down, or we can quite easily do that. We can rationalize with the person why they shouldn't go through with what they're planning to go through. But when you turn it inward, when it's you going through it, it's very, very difficult to see reason, because you just want the pain to end. And like you said, you put the gun to your head and to your mouth. You took the magazine out, and you racked the chamber, so there's no round in there. So it was well and truly, the weapon was clear, but still the act of doing that.
Right. And then I think, because I did it when I was intoxicated, how many times did I do it when I was so intoxicated that I don't remember doing it? And I very well could have forgot to take the round out, and I would have shot myself, and I would have died.
Yeah.
And then, people would have found me, and they would have been like, "Oh, that's sad. Adam was depressed. We get it." But I never truly wanted to die. I never truly wanted to kill myself. But to this day, I still have no idea why I did that. That's self-destructive. That's very dangerous behavior. I don't have an answer. I don't know why.
You and I spoke, we had a previous conversation a week ago, and I mentioned this video that I saw that came through on my social media. And I don't know which police department it related to, but it was in the US, where a current serving officer was sat in the car with his service firearm. And the backstory is that a passerby saw this, didn't know he was a police officer, but obviously put through the 911 call. There's a man in his car with a firearm. Anyway, police responded, and the responding officers found out that, yeah, he's a fellow officer, whether he's a fellow officer or not, but they talked him down, they talked him out of it, but he just really wanted to die that day. Either he was going to do it himself, or he actually was encouraging the other officers just to shoot him. Just, look, I could pretend that I'm threatening you with my firearm and you just shoot. And they wouldn't. They did such a fantastic job to talk him down. And one of the responders, one of the officers actually said to him, said, buddy, a few months ago, I was in the very same position as you are now, wanting to take my life, a few months ago, but, just take these little baby steps one day at a time. And that's really how we should be as a support network. Another video that I saw was a guy and you saw it as well, a guy was on, you talked in a public setting where he said, it's easy to be labelled a hero when you're the one that's been shot and you've been in hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you're welcome back into work, and somebody's sort of, they would form a guard of honour, basically, just welcoming you back to work. Everyone's applauding. But if it's a mental health issue, everyone backs off. One is because, and you touched on this before, I don't think people know what to say or what to do. And yet, to be fair, it's not up to them to be solving your mental health issues, but it's not what you're asking them to do. All you're expecting is a little bit of support, just somebody just to hold some space, so you can, yeah.
And after I was terminated, I struggled with that because I worked with these men and women, and we went on life and death calls together. I loved them. They were like a second family to me. They knew me. They knew my daughters. They knew my family. They helped me move. I mean, all of that. And then when I go on a leave of absence and I get terminated, I'm completely ghosted. Nobody texts me. Nobody calls me. Nobody messages me in any way to say, hey, Adam, how you doing? Nothing. And I'm thinking, I worked with y'all for 14 years.
Yeah.
Was that real, or was that, it still hurts because
Of course.
This is when I really truly needed support. I needed people that I worked with and cared about and thought they cared for me to be there for me, and they weren't. They just weren't. They disappeared. And I felt just completely abandoned.
Yeah.
Like they washed their hands of me and said, Adam's not our problem anymore.
Absolutely. And that amplifies your pain, because you're already isolating yourself because you're dealing with so much and you don't know how to function in society, basically. So you self-isolate. That's just a natural response. But then when that's compounded by people distancing themselves from you, that feeling of abandonment and isolation is huge. So that's what I'm saying. If people would just, all it takes is a phone call, a 5-minute phone call, like, look, I'm thinking of you, just hang in there. That's all you need to do. You don't need to solve somebody. You can't. You're not a therapist. So just to be there.
Something is, technology is great. If you can't do the face-to-face like you and I are doing, Sean, send a text message.
Yeah.
A simple text like, hey, Adam, I'm thinking about you. I love you. If you need something, let me know. That means everything. I got a lot of those messages.
Yeah.
I didn't respond to a lot of them, but I knew people were out there and they cared for me. And that means a lot. With social media, with text messaging, with email, there's so many ways that you can reach out to somebody, and it really, truly means a lot to them. It did to me.
Yeah.
To be abandoned like that just hurts. And you talk about isolating. You're absolutely right. Because when I was on a leave of absence and nobody was communicating with me, I did everything I could to still live, but still avoid those people too. I didn't want to bump into them. And it's difficult now because my daughters live up in near that community, and I go up and visit them from time to time. And it's just a matter of time that I bump into somebody. What am I going to say or do? I'm the kind of guy that will say, hey, how you doing? I'm not going to tell them details of my life, but I also know that if I see them before they see me, I'm going to avoid them. I don't like living that way.
No, I understand that.
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be that way.
No, of course.
It is. It's.
You know what you're doing at the moment with speaking out the way that you are, and with the amount of experience that you have. It was more than 20 years or 23 years experience as a police officer. When the younger guys see that, I mean, that's a positive impact in terms of initiating a cultural shift, because that's really what this needs. It needs a complete culture overhaul. It's going to take a lot of doing, but it's encouraging for the younger guys coming through. It's like, okay, this is a decorated captain that's speaking out on his mental health issues that he's had, and that it's okay to do so.
And that's the whole reason why I established Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma.
Yeah.
I established that in 2020, basically to share my experience in hopes that it inspires other police officers and those who work in the public safety profession, pretty much anybody, even if you're unemployed, to talk about your mental health. It's okay to talk about it. You're not alone. Don't suffer in silence. And I'm comfortable with sharing my experience, and I don't sugarcoat nothing. I share what I went through. Here it is. And the more and more I do this, the more I get comfortable with talking about other stuff. I just put it all out there because I think it's important to be transparent, because people can relate to that. When I say I drank all this vodka and how I abused alcohol, that's different. Abusing alcohol is different from you to me to somebody else. Somebody could have 3 beers and be drunk and say they're abusing alcohol.
That's right.
I go into detail as to what I did. Here it is. This is what I went through, because I want to help somebody, because I know that I'm not the only one. I know that other people are out there just like me, that they're poorly coping, that they're not reaching out because they don't want to lose their job. Hey, I'm a cop. I just got this job. It's awesome, but now I'm struggling. I didn't realize that I was going to be this way, but I can take care of it.
Yeah.
You need to reach out if you're struggling.
I'll tell you an incident that still sticks with me. I was in our capital, which is Canberra, and I was working there for a little while, and we'd finished for the day. My partner and we'd finished. I was still sat at my desk. I was still finishing off some paperwork. She went downstairs to the armory just to de-kit, basically. So it was a floor below us, but I heard this muffled kind of thud sound. And then a commotion, everyone running to the lifts, and okay, it's a bit strange. Basically what happened, she went downstairs to the armory and shot herself, killed herself. And I still to this day think, why the hell did she not just say something? Because even that day, she was in good spirits, outwardly, like seemingly in good spirits, Nothing out of the norm. She was talking about her husband and the kids, and they were planning a trip away, and everything was just normal. And then at the end of the shift, that's what happened, I just, the amount of pain she would have been carrying for I don't know how long for, is heartbreaking, it's soul destroying. And she was a great officer, very intelligent, very sharp, but had a whole career ahead of her, but just couldn't deal with whatever she was dealing with. And I still don't know what she was dealing with. If it was professional, if it was personal, I don't know.
Our police department that I used to work for, we had part-time police officers. And we had a part-time police officer kill himself before my shooting, years before my shooting. And I remember, I think it was a Friday, I met with them side by side. Like sometimes you see police, meeting with their squad cars, talking, and in a bank parking lot. His name was Brad, and I was talking with him. Hey, how's it going? He seemed perfectly fine. Everything was great. And then a couple days later, he was supposed to work at another police department, and he didn't show up to work. And they went and checked on him and found out that he killed himself.
Yeah.
And after that, we didn't do anything at the police department. We didn't even talk about it. We didn't have a debriefing. It was kind of like talking around the water cooler. Hey, did you hear about Brad? Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, why aren't we doing? So it doesn't really, I just don't get it. It was one of our own, and he was a great guy, and he was intelligent, and he was even like the best man in one of our police officers' wedding, and they were really good friends, but we still didn't. Why aren't we talking about it? Even if we have a debriefing and say, We all know Brad killed himself. If you need any help, here's some resources. Even if you don't want to, just at least that, the minimum. We didn't do anything.
I can certainly relate to that. The lack of support. Yeah, absolutely. I've been through that myself. Again, that's another deterrent why people won't come up and speak up. Because of that lack of support as well. So there's a number of factors that need to be addressed to put into effect this shift that needs to happen.
It really does. I think it needs to start in college. If you're going to college for criminal justice, if you want to be a police officer, I think if you want to be anything, no matter what you're going to school for, I think there should be a mental health course, no matter what you're going to do, no matter what you're going to college for. And then as a police officer, then continue on in the police academy, and then continue on wherever you're employed as a police officer. And it needs to be supportive. The command staff needs to come out and say, you can do this, we'll support you, but they also have to prove that they'll support you. They can't just say it because, the officers are going to think, I'm not going to say anything. They don't care about me. They're saying that they're going to, but they're not going to. They need to prove it. They need to prove it to their subordinates that if you reach out, it will be okay. We'll get you the help. We'll support you. Otherwise, police officers will continue to die by suicide. First responders will continue to die by suicide and try to take care of it themselves because they don't feel like they have the support. And that needs to change.
Yeah, I really applaud you for continuing a job that you obviously loved since childhood. This is your dream job, so I applaud you for having the courage still to continue it. But the question I have for you is there any concern or any thought to the back of your mind that any apprehension that you might be faced, because you very well could be faced with another situation such as Melissa's shooting?
No, I don't. No, because, and the reason why I don't think so is because I got healthier and I got better. And
Right.
I remember when I got hired back as a police officer and put the uniform on and started doing police work again, I didn't have that hesitancy. I didn't have that anxiety that came with the job before. I mean, sure, being a police officer, you still have that little bit of anxiety. It's good because it helps you. But no, I don't think so. And, even after my shooting, when I went back to work, there were many other incidents that I was involved in where I drew my weapon and I knew that I might have to shoot somebody and I didn't have to. A year after my shooting, I was promoted to detective. So, and I was the only detective. So I would continue to go to critical incidents, suicide, homicide. And so all that cumulative stress just started stacking on top of me trying to deal with my shooting. And I don't think so. I'm confident in my abilities. I take training very seriously. I take my mental health very seriously. And I've made promises to many people. And I told them, if I start suffering again, I promise you that I will reach out. And if I even told my chief this, if I start struggling and I'm on duty, I will tell you and relieve myself. Because there were many times over the years that I still went to work and I would hop in my squad car and go hide behind a building or go hide somewhere when I knew I shouldn't have been at work. But now I promised people and said, if I feel that again, I will let you know. I won't try to fight through it. I won't try to hide it. I will reach out and I'll say, Chief, I need to go home. Even if I don't know what's going on, I don't get what's going on. Something's not right. I need to leave. And I will do that because that's the best thing to do. That's the safest thing to do. I not only owe that to the community that I'm policing, but myself and my family and my friends that love me. So, and I'm sure it won't be an easy thing, but I need to do that. And I've already made those promises.
Yeah.
So,
one of my favorite sayings, my favorite quotes, and I don't know who it's by, and it says, the bravest souls are those that have walked through the fire, then go back to carry water for those still in it. And for you, I mean, there are thousands upon thousands of people desperate for the water that you're carrying back to them. So I really applaud you for that.
Thank you. I know that this is bigger than me, And if I need to stop being a police officer, I'm okay with that because it's bigger than me. I truly believe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And that if I have to take off my captain bars tomorrow and turn in my badge, okay, but
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
stopping this because
Yeah.
people need help. People need hope. They need to know it's okay. And if I can just help one more person, that's what it's all about. So I'll keep doing what I'm doing, even if I have to stop being a police officer.
Captain Myers, you are an incredible human being. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.